Hey Word Nerds, Erin Latimer here. This video today was partly inspired by Erica's awesome shirt during the Sunday live chat and is also inspired by all the rumors that are floating around about the new Star Wars movie. Not sure if I should say grumpy and disillusioned or allow myself a new hope. See what I did there? When you're writing a sci-fi or fantasy story, it's easy to go crazy making up the new world. People, places, monsters, trees, everything needs a weird made-up name, yes! Still remember when I was about 15, my uncle and I both discovered that we really liked the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, and we were trying to discuss it together later on, and we figured out that neither of us pronounced any of the names the same way, so talking about it together was actually kind of confusing. The problem people tend to run into is crowding their manuscript with confusing names and making it difficult and inaccessible. You may know your story better than anyone else, but the reader is being introduced to it for the first time. By confusing them, you may risk alienating them. Pun totally intended. Sometimes made-up words are simply not necessary. Know what to translate and what to leave untouched. For example, you might decide on a different measurement of time. Instead of just a second, you might want your character to say just a Google puff. But let's face it, that sounds kind of ridiculous. That's not to say you can't create your own made-up world. The key is to use these words sparingly and only when you need to. So let's use an example I've written that is absolutely terrible to compare. The first is the sort of normal version and the second is with all of the crazy made-up names. Stacy knew it would take 3 days to get to the river, but it was maddening to be able to see it from where she was. The light glittered off the thin blue line of water as it twisted through the distant hills. 3 days. She didn't know if she could make it. If the horse kept spooking at every rustle and creak of the trees, she'd be thrown out of her saddle. Versus, Mona knew it would take 3 doubloons to get to the Pufflepot River, but it was maddening to be able to see it from where she was. The light from the twin suns of Packle glittered off the thin blue line of water as it twisted through the distant Sapkunk hills. 3 doubloons. She didn't know if she could make it. If the beast can kept spooking at every rustle and creak of the tough trees, she'd be thrown out of her saddle. I mean, aside from the fact that I've made up weird Dr. Seuss type words, there's just too many made up words in the same paragraph. I wanted to talk a little bit about Star Wars because I think that the movies had the perfect balance. There's actually a lot of backstory and a lot of made up words, but they're used sparingly, and the words are both new and familiar at the same time. For example, the Millennium Falcon. Yeah, baby. 2 words we know already. Not confusing. Also sounds awesome. TIE Fighter. Not hard to wrap your head around. Basic words. Death Star. Again, basic but ominous. Luke Skywalker. Luke is like the most basic name on Earth. Skywalker is also not too complicated because it's just 2 words that we already know stuck together. Basically taking familiar words and using them in a way no one has used them yet. I really like the way they did this because I think it's accessible to an audience that doesn't necessarily already watch a lot of science fiction. Now, I'm going to finish here because there is a very real danger that I will talk about this all day. If you want to learn more about creating your own fantasy and science fiction worlds, there's a lot you can look up online. You can also pick up something like The Guide to Writing Fantasy and Science Fiction by Philip Athens. Of course, you'll have to just sort of ignore the half-naked fantasy woman on the cover, typical, but just concentrate on what's inside. Thanks for watching, fellow Word Nerds, and I'll see you next week.